More than 40 years ago, African Americans made history with their courageous struggle to obtain the right to vote just like every other American citizen. The stories of their struggles are phenomenal, and a local photographer has made it his mission to make sure they're preserved. Jim Gavanis is a storyteller, respectfully framing the photos of people who wrote one of the most difficult chapters in our history, people he's come to know.
This is one of my favorite people. Her name is Annie Lee Cooper.
Back in the early 1960s, Miss Cooper tried to register to vote at the courthouse in Selma, Alabama.
And the sheriff, Jim Clark, began beating people. And Miss Cooper stepped out of line and said, "We ain't afraid of you." And as he charged her to strike her, little Miss Cooper struck first and kind of knocked him back on his heels. She took a horrible beating that day for standing up. He is the one who...
Then there's now Senator John Lewis. He helped lead a voting rights march through Selma.
As they went over the Edmund Pettus Bridge and were met by state troopers and the police there on horseback and with clubs, John was the first person that was beaten that day.
Over the past 5 years, Gavanis has become friends with both of them and many others. During a shooting trip through the South, he found his way to Selma and those who shaped the civil rights movement.
You can read something in a book, but if you sit down and you look somebody straight in the eye and they tell you their story, especially these stories, you're really overwhelmed.
Jim has returned every year since, continuing to capture the trust and the spirit of those who led the fight for civil rights. As a result, he's been made a board member of the National Voting Rights Museum, and now the museum's permanent collection will include 50 of his photographs.
Through my eyes, the history of Selma, but also will include up to the current photographs of the inauguration, and I had the opportunity of meeting Obama 2 years ago when he visited Selma.
The exhibit will also include photographs he took at President Obama's inauguration. His favorite, this portrait of an 83-year-old woman at the end of the bone-chilling day.
This is how she was walking out of there that day, through the crowd with this little smile on her face and a little gleam in her eye. And then if you look down here, this is the shirt that she was wearing that day, which is Barack Obama. She had waited so long for this moment, and finally it was here. So it didn't matter how cold it was going to be. She wasn't going to leave that day.
More than 40 years later, part of the dream has come true, and Jim Gavanis will continue to document that dream, enveloped by the spirit of the people who gave all they had to bring it to life.
They didn't want their children to live like they had to live, and most of these people didn't think that they were going to live through the civil rights movement. So the sacrifices that they were willing to make weren't necessarily for themselves. They were making them for the generations after that, including us. You know, it's changed the way that we live and the way that we see the world.
Jim Gavanis' work will become part of the permanent collection at the National Voting Rights Museum. If you'd like to check out the museum and learn more about what it stands for, you can go to their website at nvrm.org. Kathy Baczynski, TimesLeader.com.